r/NoSleep. Posted by u/1_planch_man. Don't ever sleep in your car on a road trip. I'm from Connecticut. I was in a long-distance relationship with a girl from Georgia, and would often make road trips down to visit her. I don't really mind, I love road trips. I've driven across the United States and back, all on my own. There's just something about traveling the highways of the US by yourself that's just so freeing. To save money, I would sleep in my car. It's not so bad, it's basically camping, in a metal tent. Makes you feel like you're really roughing it. I just recline the seat back, keep the key in the ignition just in case, and doze off. No, I don't put anything up to block the windows for privacy. Maybe I should have. The trip down south is a comfortable 2-day drive. My stop would usually be somewhere along the Virginia-North Carolina border. So for my previous trip, that's exactly where I stopped that night. Rest stops were often less trafficked and thus quieter than truck stops. Normally I would have stopped at a Love's, but I was so tired that I settled for the first rest stop I saw. It was oddly vacant that night, with only a couple of lone cars sitting forlorn under the amber street lamps. Most likely travelers with the same idea as myself. I pulled into a parking spot away from the others, under the shadow of a tree and far from the street lamps. I figured I would have more privacy there as opposed to being bathed in light. So, I did my usual thing, locked my doors, opened the window just a hair for ventilation, kept my key in, reclined the seat, and went to sleep. I was never interrupted on any of these car camping nights. So I never suspected anything on this one. Then a sharp tap woke me up. At first I thought I had heard it in my dream. I opened my eyes, a bit confused. Since I was leaned back, I was facing the ceiling and couldn't see anything. I hear another tap. Like a tiny object hitting a hard surface. It came in an irregular rhythm. Was it raining? Was water dripping onto my windshield? I'm under a tree, maybe something fell from the branches. Maybe a squirrel or a bird was dropped something. What if a squirrel was climbing around my car? Or what if it wasn't an animal? The thought occurred to me that it might very well be a person poking around outside. What did they want? Were the doors locked? Yes. The keys were in the ignition. I can leave in an instant. Still, I lay there, completely still, pretending to be asleep. Pretending I hadn't heard anything. Hoping whoever it was, they would leave me alone. It was better to not find out. I was too afraid to find out. It was better to stay here in blissful ignorance. Still the tapping continued. I had to do something. There was no way I was just going to stay there. I had to look. My heart was pounding. In that moment, it was deafeningly loud. Whoever was out there could probably hear it. I decided. I was going to look. I was going to raise my head up and see what was making the noise. So that's what I did. What met my eyes sent a jolt through entire body. Every muscle fiber locked up in pure shock at what I saw. The faint glow of the street lamps cast just enough light for me to make out what I'm looking at. There in the windshield, staring directly at me, was a face. Someone, I presumed to be a woman, was lying on my hood, her face pressed right up against my windshield. Her face was completely still, locked in a permanent grin. I froze in overwhelming terror. The eyes I stared into appeared to have rolled back, showing only the whites. The nose was turned up, pressed painfully into the glass. The lips stretched wide, revealing horrid rotten teeth. Even in the darkness, I could tell her skin was sickly pale, contrasting her long, filthy black hair. Whoever this was, she was clearly not in her right mind. I don't know how long I sat there, too afraid to move. Finally, I got a grip on myself and shot my hand to the ignition. It turned over, making, in that instant, the most beautiful sound I ever heard. For a split second, I was afraid I might be caught in a horror movie scenario, the one where the car won't crank as the killer approaches. I reversed as fast as I could, trying not to give this creeper time to try anything. In my panic, I remember activating the windshield wipers in a futile attempt to get her off. I thought, was I about to drive out of here with some wacko holding onto my hood? Thankfully, I didn't have to worry about that, because as soon as I stopped, the woman leapt off, landing on all fours. Seeing my opportunity, I shifted into drive and gunned it, right as I saw her reaching for the driver's side door. With my foot on the gas, I sped out of the parking lot. Behind me, I heard her let out a piercing shriek like that of an animal. I looked in my rearview mirror and for a split second I thought I saw her chasing me, running on all fours, her black hair swinging wildly around her. I couldn't get a good look, as I rounded a curve in the road leading out of the rest stop and merged with the highway. There, I picked up speed, and drove through the night. I did not dare stop again until I saw the morning light. r/NoSleep. Posted by you/bear. Have you ever heard of Mommy Maddie? I was putting Jessica down for bed when she started to struggle and nearly slapped me in the face. No. I want Mommy Maddie. Mommy Maddie. I couldn't help it. Hearing her say she wanted Mommy brought me to tears. Honey, we talked about this, Mommy is. No, Mommy Maddie. Want Mommy Maddie. What on earth was she talking about? Not Mommy, but Mommy Maddie? Who the hell is Maddie? I didn't know, and, call me a bad dad if you want, but I just had to go take a breather. Okay Jess. But I was interrupted by the sound of the TV. I could have sworn I turned it off. Ugh, that sound. What the hell? Were they doing an emergency broadcast or something? Why does it sound so? Suddenly, Jess was hugging me. Which wasn't possible, because she was in her bed. Wait, what? I looked down at her, and instinctively gave her a hug. She giggled and looked up at me, happier than I'd seen her in a while. It must have been the sleep deprivation. My grief therapist says you can fall asleep while standing. That must have been it. I must have been imaging this whole thing. Daddy, do you love Mommy? I froze in place. I was putting her down for bed, again, and was ready to fall asleep from exhaustion, but the question broke my heart. Of course, Jess. I miss her so much. Don't you? What? She asked in a sing-song voice. She's right there. She pointed behind me and I whirled around, half expecting to see Caroline standing there, but when she wasn't and I was greeted by the empty room, I realized the grief was still too raw and I was too broken for this. Jess. You're seeing Mommy now? Yes. Mommy Maddie. I decided to drop it. It was late. I glanced at the clock and it said, what? 5 a.m.? Now the clock was wrong too? It was 12. I'm too tired for this. I needed to contact the kid's psychologist tomorrow and tell her that my daughter was imagining things and that I was losing track of time. I slept poorly that night. I kept hearing strange noises in my dreams, and emergency sirens and static. I've had a recurring dream for a few months now where I see my wife and I reach for her, but she's always turned away. Sometimes when she turns around she looks normal, and sometimes she looks as she did right after the accident, her bloody face seared into my memory. And that night I had a dream that she was burning, chained down by a heavy sewn quilt that somehow didn't burn. When I woke up, Jess wasn't in her bed. I was shaking with fear as I leapt out of bed. Where was she? What is going on? Sirens were going off in my head. Wait, no. Those sirens were coming from the living room. I thought I had turned off the TV? When I got to the living room I breathed a sigh of relief. Jess was just watching her daily. What the fuck is that? I was in a trance, you guys. I was in a fucking trance. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I couldn't. Even as that fucking thing on the screen turned to look at me. We have the thing said slowly, a new guest. The creature's pitch-black mouth was stretched thin and was ripping in places, gobs of flesh hanging off of its deformed form. But still, it managed to force out the words and then twist into a smile, which must have been a struggle because its lower jaw was stretched all the way down to its chest. Its hair, no, her hair, for this thing, was definitely attempting to be a woman, was long and black and thin, almost as long as its arms. The black of its hair contrasted with its pure white skin. I couldn't see into its mouth despite the gaping hole it was just pitch black. And its eyes. I could see them sparkle against the candlelight in the dimly lit place the creature was standing in. The reflection was the only way of knowing it even had eyes. They just looked like pitch black eye sockets. When I finally tore my eyes away from the creature, I looked up at the sign hanging above it. Drawn in God knows what, red and black and yellow fluid, the writing clumsily said, Mommy Maddie's sewing time. It was then that I noticed the bloodied sewing equipment. Caroline loved sewing, and Jessica loved to help her. Daddy, Jessica said in a monotone voice, completely immobile only 1 foot away from the TV. Come watch Mommy Maddie with me. Jessica, the creature said, and I realized it was wearing a dress. A dress, that's what it was. Supposed to be. Except it was made out of human skin. It almost looked like human children's skin, that sagged and ripped against the rough concrete floor that had rusty nails sticking out of it as it slinked closer to the screen, raising its long, nearly 2-foot long fingers to the screen, and I realized it had this patchwork children's skin all over its body, as if it tried to sew itself skin. I found myself screaming louder than I ever had before as this fucking thing wearing human fucking skin stretched tightly over its face reached towards my daughter, licking its lips with its long, disgusting tongue. No. I broke out of my trance and managed to turn the TV off with the remote, my hands violently shaking. Then I grabbed Jess and threw her on the couch despite her pleas to watch more, before turning around, grabbing the candle that we kept on the living room table that Caroline and I always argued about because she hated the smell of lavender. Seriously, who hates lavender? And I fucking chucked it at the TV. When it hit, the TV shattered. Behind me, I heard the intake of breath that meant my daughter was going to scream, the beginnings of a temper tantrum. And scream she did. "Mommy Maddie. Mommy Maddie. She's my only mommy. What did you do to her? I hate you. I hate you. She was going to teach me how to sew. Like my stupid old mommy. She says mommy deserves to go to hell and that I should make you go there too." I was trembling all over, shaking as I just held her. I kind of blocked it all out. I'm not sure if I should call the police or just. I don't even know. It's been days now and I'm actually having trouble remembering it. I broke the TV so I can't find the channel, and Jess isn't speaking anymore. She looks so sad, so lifeless. We haven't left our house since it happened. We don't even really eat. We just kind of tried to pretend like nothing happened. But I noticed something strange. I don't know how she got it, but I found a needle in Jessica's bed. She might have gotten it from her mom's things, but that doesn't make sense, because I moved those out ages ago. Her hair is starting to turn black. Her fingers are getting longer, and she stares at me at night. Every now and then, I catch her licking her lips and opening her mouth wide, wider than it should, and giggling.